It's Thursday, October 12th. I'm Matt Harmon. Welcome to the Yahoo Fantasy Football Show. Ooh, boy, it is a hell of a day to talk ball, and joining me to do just that is Dalton Del Don. Dalton, what's going on, buddy?
What's up, Harmon? I have two very quick, obnoxious things before we get to all the other things I got wrong last week. One, my Brock Purdy 45-1 MVP ticket is suddenly 7-1 right now in the open market, so you like that. And secondly, imagine ranking Justin Jefferson ahead of Jamar Chase this season. I mean, just imagine
Bro,
that.
What are you, the fantasy football counselor? You seen that guy? I mean, you're literally this guy right now.
I did. Yeah. No, I expected that. It was obviously tongue in cheek. But it is shocking that Chase is only 3.3 fantasy points fewer than Justin Jefferson on the season, and obviously the injury sucks, dude. I have Jefferson in important leagues, and that's just brutal. Injuries are the worst part of the sport, but good to see my guy Jamar Chase finally have a pulse again. So yeah,
imagine ranking either of them ahead of Christian McCaffrey. I mean,
I know, man, that's me. Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, no question. And Tyreek Hill looks pretty good too. But what a game from Jamar Chase. Hope you had him in your DFS lineup.
Absolutely. I want to talk extensively about Brock Purdy on this episode, but we won't be doing it until deep into the episode because it's Stat Nerd Thursday. You know how we do it here. We give you one stat you need to know for all 32 teams. And the reason we are not going to be talking about Brock Purdy until the very end of this show, basically, is because we go in order of the projected 2024 NFL draft order, courtesy of Tankathon. We skip the two Thursday night teams because we preview the Thursday night football game at the end of the podcast. Dalton, you know this. The listeners know that. So let's waste no more time and let's get right into it. Let's talk about the number one overall pick at this point. Oh, except they wouldn't have this draft pick because they traded it away to the Chicago Bears. It's the Carolina Panthers. There's really only one offensive player from a fantasy football standpoint worth talking about with the Carolina Panthers, Adam Thielen, who currently ranks 8th in targets on the season, but his 22.8% target share is the lowest among the top 15 target earners in the NFL. Dalton, Andy said on the Monday show that he simply does not have the stomach, perhaps the courage, to rank Adam Thielen as a clear-cut wide receiver 2 in fantasy. But as long as Thielen continues, I hear people saying like, oh man, he's balling out right now. I wouldn't say that. He's producing a lot because he's not washed. You know, he's this veteran that's moved into the slot. That's great. But also, as the stat shows here, the Panthers are having to throw the ball so much, it's inflating his target totals, even if the share is not like dominant number one receiver or anything. So Andy, like I said, he doesn't have the courage to rank him as a wide receiver 2. I do at this point every single week.
I do as well. Props to you for being on him late in the preseason. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's the case. I have him as my wide receiver 22 this week. He had a 38% first read target share last week, so I was worried with the Andy Dalton to Bryce Young drop for him, but Bryce Young showed good connection last week. He played the best game of his brief career. This week, they get a Dolphins matchup that's going to result in a ton of passing. Miami's also allowed a lot of points to the slot this season, and Thielen's run like 75% of his routes there. He's defying age, racking up targets. He even was tackled at the 1 yard line a couple weeks back, so his fantasy numbers could be even better. So it's hard to argue with the production and just the volume. I know he ran so many routes last year and it didn't translate like this. So that's why I was, a little bit skeptical, but man, out of the slot, Bryce Young, their team that's playing from behind, can't run the ball. It's a really nice situation. Terrace Marshall went from 10 targets to 0 snaps last week. So, Mingo's there, but it really is the Adam Thielen show right now.
Yeah, it was cracking me up when people were giving Frank Reich grief for Terrace Marshall caught all those passes last week. He didn't play him all this week. It's like, yeah, okay, he caught a bunch of passes when the team's getting smoked. Who cares? Like, and I'm not a Frank Reich defender right now. I don't think that's been an extremely well coached operation down there in Carolina. But that one just cracked me up just because of the player that Terrace Marshall is, right? You could probably play him over. Old, DJ Chark there, but still, who cares? On the Adam Thielen stuff, this is just a good reminder. Like, sometimes stats lie at the wide receiver position. In fact, they often do, because everybody's kind of cited his targets per route run and his yards per route run being like, he's washed from Minnesota last year. It's like, yeah, well, he's sharing the field with Justin Jefferson and TJ Hawkinson, two like volume sponges for very, very different reasons. And then of course he's not going to get a lot of yards per route run or targets per route run because he's clearly the third best option there. And also he was kind of cooked, I think, a little bit as a perimeter receiver, but he still had enough juice left in him and like enough veteran savvy left in him to play the slot here in Carolina and dominate targets. And by the way, like I said, I think the stats are lying about what he's doing this year. It's like he's overinflated this year. He was underinflated last year. So sometimes the truth is in the middle. Again, I just think that's like a lesson worth learning at the wide receiver position.
Yeah, fair. And he may not keep this production up. It's still a surprise going from outdoors to indoors, a quarterback downgrade, but just being the number one guy in Carolina has been more important than the rest of that stuff. You have to love it because he went so late in fantasy drafts and DFS salary has been so affordable. So he's been one of the big fantasy winners this year.
Yeah, I have a lot of Adam Thielen this year. I'm hoping the wheels don't fall off at any point. All right, number 2, Chicago Bears. Your boy Justin Fields, is he back? Justin Fields ranks 2nd in EPA per dropback and 5th in success rate over the last 2 weeks. Now, Dalton, I think we do have to be honest about the opponents he's faced in the last 2 weeks. The Commanders, I don't know what the hell they're doing on defense, and they actually look a little bit more well-prepared than the Denver Broncos, the team he played the week before that. So Justin Fields, how much staying power is there in his performance the last 2 weeks?
He's 2nd in the NFL in touchdown passes this season, my guy, Justin Fields. So obviously the schedule has helped, but I mean, moving forward, home games against the Vikings, Raiders, indoors against the Chargers. I mean, I think it's going to continue. Go ahead and treat him as a top 5-ish fantasy QB, top 8 if you want to be conservative, but more rushing attempts will be there. DJ Moore has been a fantastic addition. I got him completely wrong preseason. I love Justin Fields as a guy we can set it and forget it. 2nd in the NFL in touchdown passes. I mean, that's pretty wild. I was watching the Thursday night game. My wife put it on the Amazon version of the All 22. I didn't even know that existed, and she mocked me and said it's been available since last year. But it was wild. It was wild how open those Bears receivers were from that footage. I mean, the secondary's got issues in Washington. So for sure, he has benefited from the last 2 opponents. No question there. But at the same time, he's looked good. I mean, he makes the pick sixes are great for fantasy managers. It's like an actual perfect thing for you. So I think more rushing attempts are going to be there. Don't forget how ridiculous his running was over the second half last year. And you love to see the improvement with his passing.
Yeah, DJ Moore's been a fantastic addition. You're right. The schedule, the next 3 weeks, really remains very favorable. I think they can keep up this heater. Just DJ Moore, like rest of season, is he a low-end wide receiver 1? Is he a high-end wide receiver 2?
Yeah, on one end, it's hard to him to sustain these touchdowns. I mean, he does not rank top 30 in red zone targets this year. But on the other hand, he's top 15 in air yard share, and he's scoring from far away. I mean, he could have had another one. He may or may not have been out of bounds there, and he looks so good. And obviously, he's the only guy Chicago throws to. Justin Fields is attempting 10 more passes per game this season compared to last year. They're not throwing it a ton, but just to be middle of the pack is huge for Moore. So I can certainly see why the argument is to sell high here because of some of his numbers. Like he's doing a lot of things that look unsustainable, but really I'm just happy if I have him, and considering him in DFS this week, I use him as a conviction pick this week. I hate using guys that just blew up, but against this Vikings secondary, I could see yet another big game from DJ Moore this week.
Another high blitz rate team, could see a lot of single coverage there. I really like that call by you on conviction picks. I think I either said it on this show or I definitely said it on Fantasy Football Live. As long as the offense is what it is the last 2 weeks, where it's just basically DJ Moore and Cole Kmet, and that's it, like we're feeling pretty good about that from a passing game standpoint. We'll talk more about the running back situation on the preview episode tomorrow with Scott Pianowski, who's going to be on the show. We'll talk more about it there because we don't know what's...
The second Khalil Herbert secures the job, looks good, has all these crazy advanced stats this year. I've been telling you how much I rely on him this year, and now he suffers a high ankle sprain on a pass that could have resulted in a long touchdown. Instead of Fields, a long gain, a reception, and horrible pass.
That was rough.
High ankle sprain. I mean, that is just, that's a little bit of a difference in outcomes. Sorry,
Yeah,
continue.
Roschon Johnson is in the concussion protocol, at least as we're taping this right now. So we'll see what happens there. Number 3 team is the Denver Broncos. We're going to skip them for Thursday Night Football. I wish we could skip them for the rest of the season, but we can't. Number 4, the aforementioned Minnesota Vikings, who you just talked about. Stat here, Kirk Cousins is second in passing yards and 5th in touchdown rate, but he's 13th in EPA per play and success rate. Dalton, I mean, obviously the big story here is Justin Jefferson's going to miss at least the next 4 games. He was placed on IR. And I just can't imagine this passing game being, I don't want to say they can't be successful, but Justin Jefferson is so critical to what they do from a passing game standpoint. Everybody's going to have to change roles. Like they're talking like, oh, KJ Osborne's going to play X receiver now. I don't know how that's going to go. Jordan Addison's route tree is going to have to change. I don't know that he's shown that he can step up and be like a number 1 receiver at this point. I mean, we'll see how long. Like the wheels could really fall off of this Vikings offense without Jefferson. Is my take here.
Yeah, I have more questions for you than I do answers. First off, I just want to say that Jefferson appeared to suffer a serious injury 3 games this season. That was the 3rd time he left, and I was like, oh man.
I know.
So probably
the Chargers
means nothing.
one. That was tough.
I mean, he took some big hits. Don't get me wrong, and the dude's tough. But I'm just saying it was a rough year for him. And speaking of which, I want your opinion on. Are they trade Kirk Cousins possibly? And B, super interested in your opinion on this Addison situation. Do you use him in DFS against the Bears with increased targets and no Justin Jefferson? Or is he just going to get an 18% target share and you are very skeptical that the whole offense you think is going to suffer as a result of this, and you can't just plug in this rookie? But you also say that very matchup dependent, right? Is he going to get the press coverage? So we're all curious your opinion here, Harmon. I know you did the charting.
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, on the Kirk Cousins, trade situation, he has a no trade clause, right? He would need to waive that if he wanted to go to a team like the Falcons or the Jets or any of these other teams that people, they think they're a quarterback away. If you're Kirk Cousins, why do you want to go waive your no trade clause to go play for the Jets behind their terrible offensive line? When you got to think about it from a personal life standpoint, right? Kirk Cousins obviously likes being in Minnesota. They've got a nice home there, the whole thing. There's almost no way, Dalton, that if he doesn't just play out the string with Minnesota, he's just going to cash in free agency at the end of the year. So I I could end up being wrong, but I just have I don't know that necessarily that Kirk Cousins is going to be traded basically just because of that reason.
The Vikings were 10-0 in 1-score games, and what are they? What really bad winless in them this year? Such a crazy regression from one year to the next, and all the fumbles they're losing this season too. Okay, fair point about Cousins. I think I would not argue at all there. He's most likely to stay put. And now thoughts on Addison? Throw some cold water on it.
So okay, here's the deal with Addison. He's running a lot of routes right now at this point. Not more than KJ Osborne. And I think the biggest reason there is that he has struggled to deal with press coverage. 48.7% success rate in the games that I charted, 4 games, week 1, 2, 3, and week 5. I think he's gotten a little bit better at it the longer he's played. I think a lot of times you see this with rookie receivers, especially guys that were successful in college. They want to keep doing the same thing. He's trying to use the same release moves that worked in college in the NFL level, and he struggled with press coverage in college. So this is, especially at USC, his final year. So this is not a surprise that he's struggling to deal with this right now. He does have some clear strengths, like running routes over the middle. He's really good on post routes and slant routes and these big crossing routes. I think they'll have to use him on those more often because those are also big Justin Jefferson routes, and he's going to just have to move into a new role and be more featured. Basically Jordan Addison is he has a first read target percentage of 15%, according to Fantasy Points data. He is not going to be the first read very often when Justin Jefferson is there. And that's shown in the routes they have him run. They run him a lot of deep out routes and 9 routes and, routes that just don't really suit his skill set at this point. But that is, like I said, going to have to change. So it's a little bit of a push and pull here. I understand he's going to get more volume and he's going to be in a role that will lead to more efficient targets and more efficient routes. But it's just no question that when you watch him at this point, he has really, really struggled to deal with physical coverage on the outside. Now, the flip side of that is the Bears this week don't play a lot of physical press coverage. They play a lot more soft zone stuff. Matt Eberflus is a very scheme heavy cover 2 type of defensive coordinator. So I think he could get off to a nice start here against the Bears, but I'm just looking at it as like looking at like the rest of the schedule when the schedule gets tough and they face more like tougher defenses, because you watch him against the Chargers, he looks great, but the Chargers defense is not good. They don't have like physical corners. They play a lot of soft stuff, and Brandon Staley's defense, like I said, is just a joke. But you look at like week 7 against the 49ers, I think he could absolutely like not just have a bad game, but like get completely bottled up, if that makes sense.
Fair assessment. Are you playing Addison this week over guys like, say, Nico Collins, Christian Kirk, Marquise Brown? Is that the right tier or no?
Yeah, that's the right tier, but I think no on like I'm playing Nico ahead of him. Probably playing Christian Kirk. I think Kirk is he's not a perimeter receiver, but the Colts have been torn up by wide receivers in general. So I'd probably play Christian Kirk. Okay. Marquise Brown's interesting. That's like a fair debate, I think, between him and Addison. The other two guys, I think I'd rather play them.
Okay, cool. Adam Thielen.
Oh, I mean, you got to play Adam Thielen.
You got to play Adam Thielen. Okay, yeah, dumb question. Okay,
sponge.
I just wanted to make sure. Okay, all right.
Okay, all right. Next one up here, number 5. We don't have to spend a lot of time on this team, thankfully. New England Patriots. Evan Lazar, who writes for Patriots.com, had this note. The Patriots are now the NFL's worst offense in points scored, EPA per play, EPA per passing dropback, and EPA per rushing attempt in a complete collapse over the last 2 weeks. New England hasn't scored a touchdown in their last 34 possessions, and its 55 points are the second fewest in the last decade through a team's first 5 games. It's bad and way worse than anyone anticipated. Again, we don't have to spend a lot of time on this team, Dalton. There is 0 people you should play in fantasy on this offense. And I think, like, period. End of story.
It's wild. Mac Jones was the number 1 or number 2 fantasy QB in week 1. It's wild that reports have come out that Jacoby Myers was offered. Basically, they chose Juju over him. At a cheaper price, even too, or cheaper salary. That is not great. And Dwayne McFarland's
terrible, and that's not hindsight analysis on my part. I have long been like a Jacoby Myers is very underrated, and Juju is an overrated guy throughout the course of their career.
Before we get into the obvious injury Juju has playing through too, as well, it was not a hidden secret. Dwayne McFarland's been hammering this, but if you looked at Ramondre Stevenson's like under the hood stats, it's not just the team. It's like he is nowhere close to the same player he was last year, which matches the eye test too. So bizarre stuff going on in New England. But you're right. In my sit start column, I said you can use Stevenson as a flex last week if you need to, but sit the rest of this team, and I think Stevenson's included now moving forward they're pretty much, you got to sit everyone and I mean, the running back situation is so gross. Maybe you're playing Ramondre, but it's bad in New England.
Number 6 team, New York Giants. The Giants rank dead last in percentage of first down runs to go for 3+ yards so far this season. They might get Saquon Barkley back this week. I don't even know if it matters, man. They have a ton of other injuries. Daniel Jones dealing with a neck injury. Darren Waller's missing practice today with a groin injury. Andrew Thomas, their star left tackle, is still dealing with a hamstring injury. Their center, Wan'Dale Robinson's got a knee issue that he's missing practice with. I mean, it just is a total disaster offense. And I talk about a player that should get traded at the deadline. I know he's like the heart and soul of the team, but they still, pretty much treated him disposably this offseason. They should look at trading Saquon Barkley at the deadline.
There was some stat I wish I had it pulled up, but Daniel Jones has taken more sacks than Andrew Luck in a crazy amount of fewer games now. And remember, Andrew Luck retired because of the beating he took. I mean, it's like 43 fewer games or something wild. So the poor guy has a neck injury. The tough situation here for fantasy managers is this is a Sunday night game. So are we all going to be wondering about Saquon Barkley, Darren Waller now, and Daniel Jones's status? Not that we want to be relying on these players anyway. Wan'Dale Robinson, didn't he also leave concussed as well? So it's a rough situation.
Which is weird.
Right. And the offensive line is the worst in football. So it's a horrible situation. So, I mean, I'm really, pivoting in super flexes, trying to avoid Daniel Jones if possible this week. So it's really ugly situation in New York.
Yeah. Bills have defensive injuries. Deron Jones and Matt Milano are out for the season.
And coming back from a long trip too, right? But they'll be pissed coming off that loss. I mean, this was a 14-point spread for a reason. I mean, they've shut down opposing quarterbacks all season long. I know Lawrence had some success, but that very little on the year.
Yeah, they'll be pissed. And the stat shows, they can just sell out to stop the run on first down because then you get him in second and long, and you can tee off on this team in second and long at this point. All right. 7th overall team here. Arizona Cardinals. 83% of Amari DiMercado's yards have come after contact this season. James Conner is now going to miss at least 4 weeks. He was placed on IR. So what is the outlook for Amari DiMercado going forward, Dalton?
Dobbs missed Hollywood Brown on a possible long score last week. It was a killer.
I know.
DiMercado looked pretty good, but people who follow college ball more than me are skeptical if he can do much. I think he's going to be is he the passing down guy? They signed Tony Jones. Ingram may return. As great of a story Arizona has been, they looked shaky last week. Their 4.5 point underdog look ahead line for the Rams is now 7 points. They'll get a mad Rams team too. So he's fine in an ugly running back situation if you need him to play him this week. I understand it, but I saw some very, very aggressive free agent bids on him that may not age well, but we're all guessing here. Some rookie unknown.
Yeah, we're definitely guessing. It's at least encouraging that his UDFA was a backup in college, but made the 53-man roster here in Arizona. That is at least encouraging. All right, number 8 overall team here, Green Bay Packers. Christian Watson has a 19.9 average depth of target the last 2 weeks. He also easily leads the team in air yard share. Jordan Love, however, has a minus 2.8 completion percentage over expected on throws of 20-plus yards. This is, I think, going to be and you can heat check me on this, Dalton, because I was skeptical of Christian Watson's draft ranking this year across the industry, and obviously ended up missing the first 4 games with hamstring or 3 games with hamstring injuries. I don't know, man. Like, Christian Watson's best stuff is downfield. I mean, he definitely should have played that ball a little more physical. The last interception on the game on Monday night, that's been an issue with him as well, being inconsistent there. But Jordan Love, like, it's a huge downgrade going from Aaron Rodgers to Jordan Love as a vertical passer at the minimum. You can obviously nitpick across different parts of the game. If Watson is going to continue to be used as a downfield receiver, because they've gotten like Romeo Doubs to develop as a possession receiver, they have Jaden Reed playing nice reps out of the slot. They like to use Luke Musgrave. If Watson's going to primarily be a downfield receiver and Jordan Love is a downgrade on Aaron Rodgers, I have a tough time thinking Watson is going to reach optimistic expectations this year.
So I was with you as being skeptical entering the season. He battled a lot of injuries last year, just numerous different ones, and the change in quarterback. That said, I can certainly make a bullish case moving forward. He could have had a much bigger box score Monday night. Now they have a bye to get that hamstring fully healthy. Coming out of the bye, they get Denver secondary, Vikings secondary, tougher Rams one, but then Steelers, Chargers. I mean, it is a very favorable looking schedule after the bye. And yeah, he might not be accurate. And boy, Jordan Love makes some bad throws, but at least he's making all these attempts downfield. It looks like a great marriage for Watson in the future. So I could see it either way here. I don't have a strong take. I mean, the guy could battle hamstring the rest of the year, or he could be a top 10 fantasy wideout the rest of the year. Neither would surprise me.
Top 10 is very, very bullish. I think he's more likely to be like a volatile receiver 3.
Dobbs went, it's probably a spike week best ball ideally, but man, Dobbs went back to quit not being that target hog, and I could just see Watson becoming it. But maybe you're right; he's more of an 18 to 20% guy, hits the big play every 3 weeks, and that's who he is. It's totally possible.
All right, number 9 here, Las Vegas Raiders. Jacoby Myers had a 37% share of the first read targets in Week 15. It's just 15.8% for Devontae Adams and 10.5% for Michael Mayer, the rookie tight end who finally ran more routes than veteran Austin Hooper. This is all according to Fantasy Points data. Devontae Adams clearly wasn't healthy in that game. He said that basically after the contest. He didn't feel 100% against the Packers. He was sort of like a late game time decision-ish. I think we'll see those two guys, Jacoby Myers and Devontae Adams, trade off big time target games. Myers is really, really good. Total reception perception gem there. But Michael Mayer, I think he's like kind of popping up a little bit, and I'm curious to see his continue to track his progress at a position we're all desperate to find answers at.
Yeah, Myers already 2 top 12 weekly fantasy finishes, and now he gets his revenge game, although Adams didn't exactly excel in his. Jair Alexander had something to do with that as well. But yeah, Michael Mayer is absolutely on the fantasy radar at an ugly position now that he's finally getting involved.
Yeah. 100%. All right, number 10, Houston Texans. CJ Stroud's 2.3% turnover-worthy play rate, according to Pro Football Focus, is the 5th lowest among starting quarterbacks so far this year. I know it's kind of getting like old at this point, but this dude is such a baller. It needs to be said every single week. Gets the New Orleans Saints. That's going to be a tough test here in week 6 before their bye in week 7.
Such a baller, still hasn't been picked off. Hopefully Tank Dell can return, but as we've seen, concussions, they usually sit out a week. So that was rough. He was on his way to a big bounce back game last week. Nico Collins, maybe his turn with extra targets this week. And I'm still say go after Damian Pierce. Bigger games are coming. The volume has been there. He's had some tough matchups. I fully expect him to have some big fantasy games soon.
Number 11 overall team, New York Jets. Breece Hall has 26 carries. Yeah, Dalton's over there shaking his head, smiling. 26 carries out of man/gap runs, according to Fantasy Points data. And his 65.4% success rate and 12.2 yards per carry easily leads all running backs with 15-plus carries out of man and gap scheme runs. Dalton, I think Breece Hall is back. How high do you think he ranks rest of season in running back rankings?
Oh, that's a great question. Top 10. I mean, I don't care. The snap share wasn't incredibly higher last week. The touches were, and that's what matters. Borderline top 10 fantasy back. And I don't think that's too crazy to say moving forward, even with the Zach Wilson situation. Dalvin Cook, is he falling behind Michael Carter even? So really, I mean, Hall, we might be getting a nice volume and the best running back in football. I mean, it's a pretty, sure, top 10 seems like maybe his floor if the volume continues like that. I wrote about Garrett Wilson in Numbers Do Lie, my column this week. The last 2 weeks, he's had to face some shadow corners in Kansas City and Surtain last week in Denver. I know Denver has a really bad overall defense, but I linked to some videos that Zach Wilson just left a ton of points on the field. I know that's maybe a continued problem, but Wilson is getting better. There is now a possible alternative to him in the quarterback position for New York. And man, Wilson seen more targets, more red zone targets over the last 3 games than A.J. Brown, Calvin Ridley, CeeDee Lamb, and Justin Jefferson have all season. And now the schedule really changes. So, including this week, Philadelphia is a pass funnel defense. They rank first against the run in DVOA, 19th against the pass. And Breece Hall being unleashed should really help this offense too. So am I crazy for talking myself back into Garrett Wilson? The fantasy wide receiver number 33 right now, he's going to be the wide receiver 15 moving forward. Disagree?
15 is rich, but I have to sit there and think, who do I like ahead of him? I hear all your points. I definitely think that it's going to be a consistent problem with Zach Wilson, right? You can't, it's like, oh yeah, Zach Wilson missed him by just this much. It's like, I get that missing him by just this much is an improvement for Zach Wilson, but it still is missing him. That's going to remain a consistent issue. Like I said, but I think Garrett Wilson is probably close to a top 24 guy rest of season. After you mentioned the Eagles this week, that is a solid matchup for receivers. Then they take the bye in week 7. Then it's the Giants, Chargers, Vegas Raiders, and then the Bills. Their defense is certainly dealing with injuries right now. In Buffalo, though, that could be a tough spot for Zach Wilson if he's still the starter. And then week 12, the Miami Dolphins, which is a rough defensive perspective. The schedule is pretty decent for these Jets offensive players going forward.
Wilson ranks 6th in target share, 7th in unrealized air yards. I think there's a lot of upside, but then again, those unrealized air yards might be more of a feature.
Yeah, when are they going to be realized? When are they going to be realized?
Check out these videos I linked to. I forget who a jetpack guy, whoever it was, did a great job of 3 different videos of Zach Wilson costing Garrett a touchdown in the end zone, a long 60-yard play, and then another one all against a beatable Denver defense. But man, the opportunities are going to eventually result in some big games.
All right, number 12 overall team, Washington Commanders. Shameful. Terry McLaurin leads the team with a 16% target share. 3 players are behind him between 14 and 15%. Dude, I'm pissed about this. I'm a Terry McLaurin guy. I'm actually a fan of all 4 of the players we're talking about here. I'm a fan of McLaurin. I'm a fan of Jahan Dotson. I'm a fan of Curtis Samuel and the pride of Lynchburg, Virginia, Logan Thomas. Those 4 guys are good players. It's the fact that none of them are more than 16% is pathetic on this offense. Sam Howell's getting crushed, and some of it is Sam Howell's fault. Some of it is not Sam Howell's fault. Some of it is like you got to give him a little more help from a protection standpoint. Like I'm talking schematically. I have been very underwhelmed with the Eric Bieniemy offense so far this year.
I believe the Washington tight ends have been targeted more than the wide receivers. I actually used your guy Logan Thomas as one of my conviction picks this week. Dude saw 11 targets last week, led all tight ends in fantasy usage. A couple weeks ago, Cole Turner was number one in tight end fantasy usage when Thomas was out. And now they're getting an Atlanta team that seems to funnel opponents to that tight end position. They're tough against the run. They've allowed the highest percentage of their fantasy points to tight ends in any team in the league. Logan Thomas is 32 and probably going to get hurt soon again. But man, I like him as a top 5 fantasy tight end this week and a DFS option for sure.
Yeah, no, I like it.
No. I mean, I wish that, don't get me wrong, they should be targeting Dotson and McLaurin more, but it is what it is. And this week it's Atlanta, the best matchup for the tight end. So expect more of the same. Although hopefully Brian Robinson, you know what? I actually I want to talk to you about Washington real quick before we move on. Okay. I use this. I love this stat, pass rate over expectation. I use in my columns, right? But Washington now leads the league in that stat, presumably because they did not call one run play over the final 2.5 quarters on that Thursday night game. But hold on here. If there was ever an expected pass situation, it was being down 20 points like that. So are we not taking game context into this stat? Is it just, oh, it's a 1st and 10. So they're, you know what I mean? You get what I'm saying? Like those should all be pretty expected. Like I'm now questioning this stat. If this team now leads the league because it's overwhelmingly taken this sample of a 2.5 quarter thing in which they were down 30 points and everyone in the stadium knew they were throwing every time. It was the most expected passing situation of the year.
I think that was even extreme though to call 55 straight passing plays. And like
that's fair. It never happens. Okay. All right. Okay. I like this. Okay. All right. Okay.
It never happens. Like what are we doing? 55 straight passing plays. Like
teams still don't do that even if they're down. Okay. All right.
Mix a draw in there. Like, I mean, do anything. Like a quarterback run play. I don't. I mean, not that you need Sam Howell taking any more punishment, but it's kind of they've been a pass first offense generally so far this year. But yeah, I think your points are valid, but I think the counterpoint would be 55 straight passes is still ridiculous when you're not down like 50-0.
Okay. Love it. That is a great counter. And once again, you made me think, and I like it. But I still question how much that is skewing. Yeah, but all stats are like that. And there's no perfect stat, so it's totally fair. And it matches the eye test. You look at the last team; it's the Falcons by a mile, and of course, they're running the football every chance they can get. So, all right, okay. Just wanted to note that it was once I caught my eye, I'm like, well, it might be skewing a situation that everyone seemingly knew passes were coming last week.
Yeah, I'm disgusted by this offense, honestly. I could not be more.
Sam Howell's getting it done. I mean, I know sacks kill drives. He's on pace for 99, but fantasy-wise, had one dud. Dude is just getting it done. Running, and there's even upside for more once he starts using these receivers and runs in some of these scores, man. Howell absolutely is getting it done as a super flex fantasy option.
Totally. He doesn't seem to realize a terrible pocket presence. So like I'm not blaming Eric Bieniemy and like the protection scheme, and like maybe some of it is Sam Howell needs to identify where blitzers are coming from, but they have so many free rushers there. That usually is it can definitely be a quarterback issue. And like I said, he seems to step himself into sacks all the time. Like he moves around and blows himself up. Like he's got issues in the pocket for sure, but he's got a good arm, and I overall think he's a pretty solid quarterback that can continue to develop. But I just think this offense is doing him no favors. I don't know. Eric Bieniemy offense is terrible right now. Okay, number 13 team, Tennessee Titans. DeAndre Hopkins ranks 9th among all pass catchers in air yard share and 8th in target share, which sounds a lot like DeAndre Hopkins basically every single year.
Yeah, I took advantage of a situation last week, of a favorable one, playing indoors against the Colts secondary. Could have had a bigger game. He was 1 foot away from a touchdown pass from Derrick Henry, nearly another one there, but just out of bounds. This week, a much tougher matchup against the Ravens, and that should segue to Derrick Henry. The stats going around that once again he has monster splits in Titans wins versus losses, and I fear the Titans this week in London facing a fired up Ravens team that you look at the nerd stats, these two teams look like they're on different levels. That 3.5 point spread, I'm not surprised, has grown to 4 there. So Spears is the obvious stash for everyone talked about now. Not only is he getting more snaps, but I believe they faced the Texans twice in the fantasy playoffs, and Spears looks so good. You look at the underlying stats again. You could fall for the big back getting the base carries type situation here. You don't want to fall for that, but you look at the underlying numbers, and you could talk yourself into, this young fresh leg Spears is even better than this version of Derrick Henry. I'm not ready to go that far, but certainly Spears needs to be stashed on all benches, no matter how shallow your fantasy league is.
Only 40% rostered is Tajay Spears, the rookie running back, so he should be 100%. Number 14, Cincinnati Bengals. Joe Burrow threw 2 touchdowns while under pressure and was the 4th best graded passer under pressure in Week 5, according to Pro Football Focus. Is Joe Burrow back, Dalton?
He looked great. I mean, we don't know if it was the opponent. I believe Chase was deemed an NFL high 15 of those targets were wide open. So, I mean, it was definitely not great, Bob, at all for Arizona's secondary, dealing with some injuries there. When will Joe Mixon eventually result in touchdowns? He has another tough matchup this week, but boy, he's been on a regression candidate since the beginning of last season to score more touchdowns. He was stopped at the 1 3 times last week alone and didn't score on that drive. But you love to see Chase bounce back, and let's hope this is a sign that Burrow's calf is getting healthier. And the other question here is obviously Higgins' health, because, boy, Chase just goes crazy when Higgins isn't out there.
He is considered day-to-day T. Higgins, so I think he's got a shot to play this week. I am still skeptical that as long as they're firing the ball out quick like they are, and that has generally still been the case in running some of those shorter routes with Jamar Chase, I am skeptical that T. Higgins can thrive as like the vertical receiver here.
Do you think the shotgun-heavy usage affects the ability for Joe Mixon to run? And secondly, did you realize that apparently Joe Burrow had the lowest YPA in NFL history for a quarterback with 150 passes this season entering last week? Pretty wild. Blew up.
Second one doesn't surprise me. It was
that ugly, just to hammer home, how bad it was. But do you think that's affecting the calf injury? Is it affecting Mixon in the way they're setting their offense, the personnel packages?
Yeah. I mean, people have criticized this with the Bengals offense a lot the last few years, even as their offense has been good, that they're very very siloed. Like, they pass out of shotgun, they run under center, and I think some of it is Joe Mixon's only good as an under center rusher. He's not good as a shotgun runner, but that has been a criticism of the offense previously. I think it is a problem.
He'll convert some of these goal line scores regardless. Be patient.
Yes, at some point, maybe. Number 15, Los Angeles Rams. Kyron Williams had a 93% share of the team carries in Week 5. Meanwhile, in the pass game, Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua combined for 62.1% of the targets. This is one of the most concentrated offenses in the NFL right now, and I think all 3 of these guys will be more than fine moving forward.
Yeah, Kupp and Puka get that Arizona secondary we were just talking about. Matthew Stafford is due for some touchdowns. I love Kyron Williams this week, too. He has run the most routes among all running backs in the league. He's tied for the 5th most carries inside the 5. And now the Cardinals are giving up fantasy points. So like him quite a bit. Let me talk a little Stafford, man. This guy has 5 touchdown passes this season, despite having the 4th most passing yards. The other 4 that are top 5 in passing yards have averaged 10.5 touchdown passes this year. I mean, he has the 2nd most pass attempts in the league, ranked 17th in touchdown passes. This is all going to change. 8 of his next 10 games are indoors, and he has Cooper Kupp. 1 season away from throwing 41 touchdown passes. Stafford, he might have better weapons now. They're up there in pass rate over expectation too. So I think it's
your favorite
Stafford. Yeah, thank you. Stafford's due for a bunch more touchdowns moving forward, starting this week.
I agree with you. I actually talked about this with James Coe on my other show, Reception Perception, the show. There's a stark difference between Stafford in the first half and the second half. I don't know if that means anything, but getting the ball out faster in the second half, throwing to his first read a ton in the first half. In the second half, his time to throw goes up. He's throwing to his third read more often in the second half. And he's conversely getting sacked much more often in the second half. So I don't know that means anything, but I think that's been like, it's like the descriptive reason of why I think there's been some weirdness in his passing stats so far.
Stafford, the most incomplete air yards on dropped passes in the league as well. So
they traded Van Jefferson to the Falcons. So that would be a big reason why. Okay, number 16, sticking into LA, the Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers rank 5th in EPA per play on offense. Meanwhile, though, they rank, and that's overall, they rank 12th in rushing EPA and 12th in rushing success rate. Obviously, we think that's going to get better with Austin Eckler coming back on Monday night. He said on the show he has a 99% chance of returning. He also said that to reporters yesterday as well. So that should be good for the run game. I still do question how the pass game is going to function without Mike Williams going forward.
Happy to see Eckler back. I've dropped Josh Kelly in some leagues. How will that affect Keenan Allen's target share? I'm stashing Quentin Johnston absolutely everywhere I can. And it looks like Justin Herbert's pinky or his middle finger or whatever the finger is on his left hand should be fine. And Gerald Everett quietly could get a boost here because Donald Parham left the last game with an injury before the bye. And if he gets those red zone looks and obviously no Mike Williams, Everett could be something if Parham's out.
Yeah. 35 targets in the 3 games without Eckler so far this year for Keenan Allen. Historically, those two guys do siphon away from each other a little bit, so that will be interesting to see. Number 17 team, Cleveland Browns. Deshaun Watson in 2022, 41.6% success rate, 5.2 net yards per attempt. 2023, 42.1% success rate, 5.4 net yards per attempt. And something is up here injury-wise with Deshaun Watson. The team has been a little cagey about it. There's some speculation it's worse, the shoulder injury, than the team has let on. Although apparently, he was the one who made the decision he wasn't going to play prior to the bye. He didn't practice today on Wednesday. And now PJ Walker is the backup, not Dorian Thompson-Robinson, going into week 6. I don't know, Dalton. Number one, there's been really he's slightly better, but not a big discernible difference between the first year Browns, Deshaun Watson, and this year. And now we've got this injury situation as well.
Yeah, that spread has been moving up throughout the week. Watson, I guess, didn't appear in his weekly media presser on Wednesday, so PJ Walker absolutely could be starting this game. The Browns enter with the number 1 pass defense DVOA, and they'll be facing the number 1 pass offense in DVOA in the 49ers, so that should be a fun one. But yeah, it's hopefully we get Watson healthy for this one. If not, it could be another frustrating game for fantasy managers relying on the Browns players against the Niners.
Number 18 team, New Orleans Saints. Alvin Kamara ranks 4th in expected fantasy points at the running back position per game the last 2 weeks, according to Fantasy Points data. He's been awesome. He should continue to be a workhorse in this offense while Derek Carr gets healthier, while Chris Olave gets healthier. I'm not worried about Olave long-term, but for the now, I think Kamara should be the engine of this offense.
Kamara's seen 50 opportunities over 2 games since returning, one of only 4 backs with a 40% opportunity share. Great matchup this week. Houston allowing 7th most fantasy points to running backs. 17 targets he's racked up. Fresh legs. Looks good. Kendra Miller saw some action last week, but this is clearly Kamara's offense. I mean, more so than Olave's, unfortunately. So yeah, roll with Kamara as a top, borderline, 12 fantasy back.
Number 19 overall team, Atlanta Falcons. Desmond Ridder ranked 4th among all quarterbacks in adjusted net yards per attempt in week 5. I feel like we're on kind of a roller coaster with Ridder, where one week I'm like, all right, he showed some promise. Next week, terrible over there in London. But then I think he really bounced back in week 5. So that was, I think, what the Falcons offense should look like last week. And I feel pretty good about them going against that Commanders defense that we just talked about earlier here in week 6.
Yeah, glad to see when I finally given up on Kyle Pitts. He has his best game in a long time. Was nice to see, in all honesty, though. And Bijan Robinson, very disappointing performance last week in that matchup. The Atlanta run blocking can't get anything done, and Arthur Smith needed to get Tyler Algier going, he said. But it was a really sick one-handed catch for the touchdown. He had both of his catches were one-handed grabs. Both were one-handed. The targets, where were the targets? Very frustrating for those who went with Bijan in DFS last week, but expect to bounce back this one.
All right, number 20 overall team here, Indianapolis Colts. This one comes in from our buddy Jacob Gibbs. Indianapolis Colts target share in 91 Gardner Minshew dropbacks, 30.4% for Michael Pittman, 25.3% for Josh Downs, the rookie receiver. Their average depth of target is pretty similar as well. Dude, I love Downs. Big fan. I think he's kind of balling out right now. He is literally I started that game from last week, and it's the Titans secondary, I get it, but he was literally open on almost every play.
I'm frustrated with the Colts at a personal level. Have a lot of Jonathan Taylor. Excited to get him back, and buried Zach Moss in my rankings. Seemingly, that was a slight mistake. And I have a lot of Anthony Richardson, and his season's in jeopardy now. And he was such a fun player to watch, and high at most fantasy points per drop back by a mile as a rookie. I'll take issue with, I believe you even said this. I've heard a couple people be like, he's cost you 2 games in. Wasn't he like a top 10 fantasy QB that week he left after 1 quarter? He didn't cost you that week. He put up 19.5 fantasy points. No, you weren't the only one, to be clear. I'm like, the dude put up 20 fantasy points in 1 quarter. That should be a highlight of his season, not a knock. But anyways, he got hurt every game he was in, and now might be out for the year. So not great there. But for Josh Downs and Pittman, it might be actually better news with Gardner Minshew in there. Dude's a total capable passer, and he won't be running for all the yards and touchdowns himself. So Josh Downs will be a very popular waiver wire ad this week, in no small part because you're so bullish on him too. I've heard you multiple times say you're totally in, and I know how much you love Pittman, so you must really, really like what they're putting together there with Jonathan Taylor back.
Yep. Very underrated, both these guys. I think Pittman's a legit one, and I think Josh Downs is going to be like not just like a little slot receiver type. I think he's going to be a legit dude going forward, very much like a Tyler Lockett-ish type of player, I think. Been very excited about him, especially from a vertical route running standpoint. Number 21 overall team here, Buffalo Bills. James Cook, unfortunately, the last 2 weeks, just a mere 39.5% of the team carries, 7.7% of the targets. Little concerning usage for James Cook the last couple weeks.
Very concerning usage for James Cook. You're still rolling with him in that offense, 14-point favorite Sunday night, but yeah, it's gone the wrong way 2 weeks in a row. You're worried about the goal line. You're worried about the passing work. So yeah, not great. It's not the direction we wanted, as James Cook looked like a possible top 10 fantasy back a few weeks back. Now he's like, a flex option in the right matchups. But hopefully that can change. Things can change quickly. And there's still Latavius Murray and Damian Harris, are the other options. But yeah, it has not been great.
All right, number 22 overall team here, Dallas Cowboys. CeeDee Lamb has a 23.9% share of the first read targets in Dallas, according to Fantasy Points data. That ranks 37th in the NFL, 37th, Dalton. John Machada here, I believe, is the Twitter user that I saw put this out. Cowboys owner Jerry Jones on 105.3 The Fan, when asked if he wants to see Pro Bowl wide receiver CeeDee Lamb get more opportunities. I don't know about that. What I want to see is the ball spread around to several wide receivers and tight ends. Yo, this is terrible. Terrible stuff. I'm not like panicked long term over CeeDee Lamb. I think I heard Mike McCarthy say that he was acknowledging that CeeDee Lamb was pissed after that performance, and he said if he wasn't pissed about that, I'd be pissed at him. Basically, this cannot be the way this offense works. Like, this passing universe should revolve around CeeDee Lamb. He shouldn't be like a bit part of this offense.
Yeah, and I saw some other advanced stats saying the separation numbers are ugly for Michael Gallup too. As much as I'd like to say he's returned from his knee injury,
yeah, doesn't look great.
They need, and Cooks isn't been great either. So they need to be peppering Lamb with targets. On that one last interception Dak threw against the Niners, Lamb was 1-on-1 down there. Yeah, I don't know. They should be getting him the ball far more. What about Tony Pollard, after being one of the most efficient backs in the league throughout his career, is last in the league in avoided tackle rate, hasn't scored since week 1 despite leading the NFL in rush attempts in the red zone, inside the 10 and inside the 5. The Cowboys partially has just been wild game script after wild game script. Average margin of victory in Cowboy games has been 27.8 points this season. So that's crazy. I expect all this stuff to normalize. Tony Pollard will start breaking more tackles. He'll score more touchdowns, and Lamb will start getting more targets. But boy, it's been frustrating. But Monday night's a great time for this all to change. Like the expert consensus rank of Dak Prescott was like quarterback 20 this week. No. He's going to bounce back in a shootout on Monday night against the Chargers circus type team, and he'll put up top 10 numbers.
Are the Cowboys capable of being in a shootout though? I think
the Chargers. Well, boy, this is a good test. If this turns into an ugly game, then all bets are off. But boy, I think the Chargers coming off a bye with Eckler back, this feels like it should be a fun one, back and forth indoors. No,
should be. I agree with you. And look, as said earlier in the podcast, I have like very little respect for the Chargers defense. What's going on over there right now? Just don't think it's a good unit. They should get going here. I just wonder if they're doing all this quick game stuff. The Texas coast, whatever that is.
Yeah, the flats and the red zone difference between being worst to first with the Kellen Moore McCarthy play calling. I mean, maybe there's a thing there. I mean, maybe it isn't going to regress necessarily. Maybe it's just going to be an issue all year long.
If your offense has, CeeDee Lamb is not a top 5 receiver in the NFL, but he's definitely a top 10 receiver in the NFL. He's like right there, right just outside the top 5. I'd probably say he's like 8, maybe like a top 8 receiver in the NFL, 8, 9. If you have a player like that, and then the rest of your guys, like you said, Michael Gallup, I'm kind of wondering if like Jalen Tolbert starts to take plays from Michael Gallup and Brandon Cooks. Like that's where you're at with those guys. Jake Ferguson is solid tight end, but not like a star, not really even an established starter. And you don't revolve your passing game around that player that's the top 8, 9 player at his position. You have a bad offense. You have a broken offense. Like maybe it's a squeaky wheel gets the grease game for CeeDee Lamb on Monday night, but if it's not, then I think we're full like
panic mode.
Panic. We're just in full like adjust expectations for what we thought about this team. Like they're not capable of being in a shootout if they can't do it against the Chargers on Monday night.
All right, fair stuff.
All right, number 23 overall team, Baltimore Ravens. Pro Football Focus had this, that Lamar Jackson had a 93.4 passing grade in week 5. That was first among all quarterbacks. Meanwhile, the Ravens had 7 drops from their wide receivers. It's a pretty nice get right spot for the pass game against the Titans defense. I just think right now Beckham doesn't look good. Bateman, I'm so upset about what's happened with Rashad Bateman's career. It's a shame due to injuries and everything. Zay Flowers is good, but he's still making rookie mistakes, and he's a rookie receiver. This is another, like, if they can't do it against this team, this passing offense is probably not going to hit the heights we thought this year.
Lamar Jackson wasn't perfect last week. His worst throw of the day was a bad interception late, but man, he deserves so much better. The Ravens had more drops in the first half, 6, than they had all season before entering 5. Most drops in any game all season. It was 7 or 8, given depending on who's counting. 3 of them would have been touchdown passes, those drops, and that's not even counting Zay Flowers losing his footing on another possible 75-yard score. It was truly wild. If you haven't seen the highlights, it was drop after drop. And as you said this week, pass funnel defense. So I think he bounces back with a monster game in London.
Yeah, I've seen some people like JT O'Sullivan kind of critique that like the ball comes out of Lamar's hand like in weird ways that he doesn't always want it, and that might be why like a partial reason for the explanation that like everybody who plays with Lamar seems to have drop problems. I still think some of those passes you got to catch, like Bateman, you've got to catch. You both hands on it. You got to catch that in the end zone. But he also hasn't practiced with Lamar for so much because of the injury. So there's a lot of stuff at play here. I just also think this receiver room is probably not going to hit the heights that I had hoped it would this year because of health.
And as far as the run game, real quick, it feels to me like Justice Hill is a better matchup this week. Even if they're playing with the lead, maybe Edwards gets a touchdown. But Titans run D, if they're not facing Zach Moss, has been very, very tough this year. And Justice Hill got all the passing down work last week.
Number 24, Seattle Seahawks. Only Brock Purdy has a better completion percentage out of 12 personnel this season than Geno Smith. But Smith has almost 4.5 times the attempts. I think we continue to see this 12 personnel offense until they get their offensive line healthy.
Yeah, Geno's banged up coming out of the bye. Hopefully he's okay. We haven't seen Lockett or Metcalf go off, even with JSN struggles too. So it's been a weird year. Kenneth Walker obviously scoring a lot of touchdowns. And I hope Geno comes out of that bye looking healthy. And obviously I've said enough of my guy JSN. I don't think it's happening anytime soon.
Number 25 overall team, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Dwayne McFarland had this on George Pickens. Last season, 36% of his targets came on 20-plus yard throws downfield. It's down to 13% in 2023. His target share in games without Deontay Johnson, 33%, 24%, 26%, 32%. What do you think this distribution looks like with Deontay back? Because, man, when I watch the Steelers, I actually think Kenny Pickett has rebounded the last couple of games as opposed to what we saw obviously in the first game was a total disaster. I thought he had, it was obviously like Kenny Pickett adjusted expectations, but having somebody like Deontay on the field who's going to consistently separate, I think is going to be a big boost for this offense.
I think it will be a hit, though, to Pickens' fantasy value and maybe look to trade him now. I mean, absolutely. I mean, and Deontay says he's coming back after the bye. So, yeah, I do think it will be a definite hit there. If you see the Matt Canada, 2 things. One, there was footage of him looking like unhappy on the Pickens game-winning catch.
That.
Like, did they check out of his play, or are we just buying into things like I'm fake newsing?
So Kenny Pickett said afterwards that he kind of alerted Pickens on a go route and adjusted the protection, which is good. That's what you want a quarterback to do. It's weird. I don't really get it. I also think and I was one of the original Matt Canada haters. I think I said this on last week's podcast. Like, I hated Matt Canada's offense before it was cool before everybody on Twitter is trying to go viral for hating this offense. Like, congratulations to you guys. Way to go. Now, like, the dude's got Fire Canada chants at the Penguins game. And
that's what I was my second one going to be. Did you see that?
People are analyzing his emotions and I almost kind of feel bad for Matt Canada as one of the original Matt Canada haters. And again, shout out to all of you guys trying to go viral, hating on Matt Canada at this point. It's like the easiest layup on Twitter. I almost feel bad for the dude at this point.
Yeah, no, and I have not seen any retorts on you other than you saying that making sure everyone knows that's fake news with the burner account. Also, well, maybe it's not.
I think somebody set him up, dude. I'm like
that. Right.
Someone set him up. Maybe it's an inside job. Maybe Kenny Pickett set him up.
It is funny though. Just look at his reaction of a game-winning touchdown.
Yeah,
it's
was
weird.
Bizarre. I don't know. It's one of the more bizarre things in the entire NFL right now. Number 26 overall team. This is not bizarre. Jacksonville Jaguars. Travis Etienne is the second most carries among all running backs, and he's fourth in routes run at the position. Shout out to us, Dalton. Never lost faith on Travis Etienne.
Yeah, you love to see it. Even last week, he converted a couple short yardage ones after Tank Bigsby was stuffed. And the thing that's jumps out to me is he's been great in open field with after catching the ball. I know that's been a thing everyone was skeptical of, the goal line and his ability as receiver, but the targets have been there, and also what he's doing with them has been impressive. If you watch Etienne, let's just hope he stays healthy. Absolutely could be a top 5 guy moving forward in that role.
Love it. Love to see it. Okay, next one up here. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 27th overall team. The Bucs rank dead last in yards per carry so far this year. Their run game has been atrocious. I wonder if they make any sort of changes, coming out of the bye week, right? They're one of these early bye teams. Maybe they change up the concepts of the run game. Maybe, I don't know, maybe they get Sean Tucker more work. They'd be a great trade for Saquon Barkley team, as producer Colin said in the chat. That's an interesting idea. Baker, weirdly, his completion percentage actually drops off 12.8% on play action. You'd actually would love to see him get better on the play action stuff in this offense. So I'd love to see the Bucs get their run game going. And I don't think it's going to happen with Rachaad White.
Yeah, I don't think so either. And facing a quiet, the Lions like number 3 in defense DVOA or something now crept up to. So yeah, it's certainly not the matchup that we're accustomed to. If anything, it'd be like a Mayfield having a pass matchup, and we should be really paying attention to Mike Evans's availability. Chris Godwin could become interesting in DFS if he's just eating all those targets in an offense against a defense that's really been tough to run against this year.
Yeah, that's a great point on Godwin. Emmanuel Mosley tore his ACL, unfortunately. So he's out for the year. That's a lot of additions they tried to make in the secondary there in Detroit has not worked out due to injury so far this year.
Only the Eagles are allowing fewer fantasy points per game to running backs than the Lions this season.
Wild stuff. All right, speaking of those, Lions are our 28th overall team here. Sam Laporta ranks 5th among all tight ends in air yard share, 6th in team target share at the position. Okay, so let's say this, Dalton. Sam Laporta. Can we agree we'd rather have Travis Kelce in fantasy over Sam Laporta? And if you do agree with that, any other tight ends like right now, rest of season, you'd rather have than Sam Laporta?
Maybe Hawkinson without Jefferson, although you may even disagree with that theory there. Laporta hasn't even gotten a lot of red zone targets yet, and he's getting these touchdowns, and you got to figure they're going to come. Is St. Brown going to play banged up the whole rest of the year? Yeah, they're just so good at home. It's a great setup. Yeah, if you want to, argue top 2, top 3, or top 4, either way, he's one of those.
I think 2. Like, I think I'd only rather have Kelce than him. The funny thing about the Hawkinson stuff, like, volume is the least of his problems. He has 9, 8, 11, 3, 8 targets. Like, what is he going to get 15 at, 5 yards of reception for the rest of the season? No, you're right.
It's the same. And that dates back to when he was traded with Minnesota. It was the same thing. There was horrible efficiency last year with all the volume. So that's fair. Laporta number 2. Maybe, I mean, and who knows how serious that injury is with Kelsey,
True.
too. I mean, maybe that affects him. So, yeah, what a draft pick at an ugly, ugly position. And you were able to get the rookie in round 10, 11, 12, 13 in some drafts. Home run.
Nobody listening better say this to him, but shout out to Andy Behrens on that one. I mean, that was just hats off to Behrens. Don't anybody give him credit, though. Number 29 overall team, Miami Dolphins. The Dolphins' 0.114 EPA per rush is 1.7 times the number 2 team, and they get the Carolina Panthers this week, obviously with no Achane, but Raheem Mostert should be in a smash spot here, and Jeff Wilson, if he plays, like he should be rostered across all leagues at this point.
Yeah, I have Mostert as my RB7, I think, this week. It's crazy. He's been the number 2 fantasy back this season, despite having a teammate be the number 3 fantasy back, and they're second biggest favorites on the board at home. Carolina last in rush defense DVOA. Dolphins first in rush offense DVOA. I'm lucked out to having a lot of Jeff Wilson, but before as soon as he went on the IR, any league is available, I've been stashing him. Obviously, that didn't look great with Achane also looking like a star, but Jeff Wilson should be rostered in all fantasy leagues. And if you're in deeper ones and you're a crazy person like myself, you can add Chris Brooks. It was apparently interesting college profile, and my guy Raheem Mostert is up there in age and has never reached 190 carries in any season in his career. So this is a situation that it could quickly become wide open and is the best in football. They're scoring 1 million points. I mean, Tua is on pace to throw the most passing yards in NFL history this year. I got him at 14-1, by the way, too, for the year lead league in passing yards. So do you know anything about this fella, Chris Brooks?
Not a damn thing.
Okay.
So,
all right. Okay.
Not a damn
all right.
thing.
Well, you heard it here first. But no, people who follow college ball more than me say he's a little bit probably more interesting than, say, the Salvin Ahmeds of the world. So yeah. But Jeff Wilson, man, coming from the the Niners system, McDaniels loves him, and I think there's a real chance that he could be a fantasy impact over the second half of the year.
All right. Well, I mean, hey, shout out to Oceanside, California. You got me paying attention to Chris Brooks now. All right. I'm in. Okay. Number 30 overall team, Philadelphia Eagles. First read target share over the last 3 weeks. A.J. Brown, 40%. Dallas Goedert, 22%. Devontae Smith, 22%. People are concerned about Devontae Smith. He should be an easy. If people are panicked after one catch performance, trade for this guy immediately. Okay. Like we just saw this happen with Dallas Goedert. It's going to happen for Devontae Smith too.
Yeah, Jalen Waddle, similar situation in Miami. Guys taken in the second round behind, other alphas that have just emerged as more alphas this year. But bigger games are coming for Devontae Smith. It wasn't that long ago. 3 weeks ago, it was like, since week 2 of last year, Smith has more targets than A.J. Brown. And now suddenly it's panic mode. So Smith's going to have very, very big games. This week's a tough one. Jets secondary is tough, but maybe they're tough to run against as well. So maybe they'll be forced to pass more. But Eagles are, I believe I saw bottom 6 in red zone offense and bottom 6 in red zone defense, but they remain undefeated regardless. So I can't wait for the 49ers Eagles matchup.
Yeah, that's going to be exciting. Number 31 overall team, Kansas City Chiefs. We'll skip them for Thursday Night Football just a second. So that brings us to the 32nd overall team, San Francisco 49ers. Brock Purdy ranks 3rd behind CJ Stroud and Jared Goff in adjusted net yards per attempt on throws of 20-plus yards. Dalton Del Don. Purdy is so good right now. I just can't say enough good things about as an Ayuk guy, and you're an Ayuk guy as well. The way that Purdy has unlocked Brandon Ayuk so far this year, and even dating back to last year, like their connection was really strong. And it's because Purdy and JT O'Sullivan did a great job highlighting this second JT O'Sullivan shout out on the show, highlighting Brock Purdy's anticipation against the Dallas Cowboys and just generally how he plays with high level anticipation. That's perfect for Ayuk on these, with his route running in general and these in breaking routes. And dude, the corner route that got called back to Ayuk, you couldn't pay Jimmy Garoppolo. Like you couldn't pay, you could offer him twice his salary. He would never make that throw in his entire life to Brandon Ayuk. So just couldn't be more happy for old Brandon Ayuk, and Brock Purdy's just balling out right now. Like no qualifications. He's just balling out.
Before last week, Purdy was on pace to throw for more yards than Aaron Rodgers' MVP seasons last 2 times. He was on pace to run for more rush touchdowns than Lamar Jackson's MVP year. His completion percentage was the highest of any MVP winner ever. Then he went on Sunday Night Football, put up 10.5 YPA, 4 touchdowns against a defense that entered leading the league in EPA per play. So I'm pretty wild. Purdy is the best completion percentage through the first 18, 19 games in NFL history. Yeah, man, he might just be for real. I mean, he's such an upgrade over Jimmy G. What if they have all these weapons and a great coach and a really good quarterback? What if all those things are true?
Yeah,
injuries
they do.
Injuries are going to happen. Injuries are going to happen. I just know it. But this team looks on a mission, and it looks pretty awesome on both sides of the ball when healthy here.
All right, that brings us to Thursday Night Football.
Ayuk, props to you, Ayuk. You see how he's the number 1 graded PFF and all these stats and the nerd stats and the yards per route run and everything, and he's cooking defenders. I mean, don't get me wrong, I liked him as well as a homer, but you were so on his route running, it's unreal. It hasn't totally translated into fantasy points yet, as far as being a top star like he so clearly could be in a different situation. But man, if he ever saw proper targets, he would be, right up there above like a CeeDee Lamb or something if he ever got a better role, man. What great call by you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Stephon Diggs is to AJ Brown is to Brandon Ayuk. Like, those are the guys that were elite performers in isolation. Then they go to a new situation and they're just flourishing. And I think the situation is now for Ayuk. Like, I get it that he's not going to have the fantasy points, right? Because of all these other things and like the touchdowns and stuff like that. McCaffrey's going to soak up touchdowns. Kittle's going to soak up touchdowns, like he did 3 on Sunday night against the Cowboys. But eventually those will go to Ayuk. And like, I think he's a wide receiver 1 rest of season. Like, is he going to have a top 5 type ceiling? No, probably not. But yeah, if he was in a situation where he was going to dominate targets, he's probably like a top 5. He's probably like a top 5 real life NFL receiver at this point. Like, if he pressured me sit down and rank it, I would probably have him as a fringe top 5 guy.
Which is crazy. I mean, the Niners have the number 1 running back. Kittle, when you count his blocking, is right there, and then middle linebacker, left tackle, edge rusher. I mean, it's wild if you look at
it's a ridiculous roster. All right, Thursday Night Football. Denver Broncos at Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs are 10.5-point favorites with a 47.5-point total. Let's quickly talk about the Broncos here. My stat for them is Jaleel McLaughlin and Samaje Perine combined for 29% of the targets in week 5. McLaughlin also had a 41% share of the team rush attempts. Dude, Jerry Jeudy's out here getting in beef with Mark Schlereth on Twitter. Trade rumors abound with these receivers. Marvin Mims making mistakes, so his playing time's not going up. What a mess. This Broncos offense, like, the only thing that's interesting is this Jaleel McLaughlin guy, which is wild.
Yeah, the Chiefs are playing good defense. Javonte Williams practiced fully on Tuesday's walkthrough, so he is set to return, which is obviously not great for McLaughlin, who definitely looks impressive every time he touches the ball. But even then, P. Ryan is taking over a lot of the passing down work. So it's been an ugly year in Denver. And yeah, speaking of good calls by you, Jerry Jeudy going in rounds 3 in high stakes fantasy drafts, and you were warning everyone at the time.
I'll say no more. I'll say no more. He'll go to Carolina and get 10 targets per game.
Yeah, this is with Russell Wilson playing well too. You know what I mean? Like him. I mean, this is.
I know. Russ hasn't been perfect once you get off the script there in Denver. Like, they're really good early in games when they can script plays up, but he kind of falls apart as the game goes on. But he's still been like, quarterback has not been their biggest problem this year. And honestly, like, these receivers have been a problem for the last 2 seasons now.
Yeah, I mean, that's with Dulcich going down and Marvin Mims running 12 routes a game. Judy's still not putting up numbers with Wilson being much improved from last year. So yeah,
Dulcich is coming back too. I think he makes like a sneaky stash. For
sure.
Grab him and it's a tough position. Like, he could easily rise up here.
Yeah, Troutman was getting work in some games, and that was just out of necessity. I mean, he's more of a blocker. Mm-hmm. They didn't want to, but that position absolutely could see targets. So good call with Dulcich, who looks like he is returning shortly. But yeah, they're 10.5-point dogs here for a reason. This is going to be maybe not a tightly contested contest. But you want to talk about the Kansas City Chiefs and how awesome their wide receivers are?
Yes, what a group. I think the Chiefs are running their offense just to scam the per route data. I joked about that yesterday on Twitter. The Chiefs right now have 2 wide receivers with a targets per route run rate north of 30%. It's Rashee Rice and Kadarius Toney, who rank 7th and 8th in total routes run on the team. Meanwhile, their top 2 receivers have been targeted on 14 and 8% of their routes run. That is Sky Moore at 14% and MVS at 8%. What a weird group, dude. Number one, like, they're playing Sky Moore outside 60%. I could tell you he's not going to win as an outside receiver. That is awful. And he doesn't look good playing outside. He doesn't look good all year, basically. That's hopeless. Like, he should be that's like taking I always compared him to like Golden Tate, who's not like an outside receiver. What a ridiculous nonsense that is. MVS runner win sprints. Justin Watson catches like one crazy pass per game. That's it. And then Rashee Rice, like, I get why they're not playing him more from a Rashee Rice standpoint, but then like MVS and these outside guys are so unproductive. Like, I think they need to get him more reps. Like, we spent a lot of time talking about this group, even though none of them are like even close to being really on the fantasy radar. But yeah, it is what it is. I mean, obviously we're talking about these guys because it's a great matchup against the Broncos. It's a great matchup for Pacheco and Kelsey and Mahomes, but it's just such a weird wide receiver group.
I was talking about Garrett Wilson's red zone targets. Rice has more red zone targets the last 3 games than as many as Justin Jefferson has this season, and more on the year. That's crazy. He's like one of those running backs where the opponents know that he's getting the ball when he comes in because his target per route run rate is just so high, but he continues to make mistakes. He had another touchdown. He could have had a second touchdown last week and missed assignments and whatnot. So yeah, it's probably going to be a frustrating situation all year, but Rice is so quite clearly the one guy there for fantasy managers to, at minimum, stash. Yeah, especially if Kelsey is going to battle an ankle sprain for a few weeks, but it was a low ankle variety and he was so tough. I mean, just shockingly returned to that game. Any non-contact, I thought for sure he was out. But yeah, the fact that he returned there and they believe he got into limited practice this week. So I expect him to be out there Thursday night.
Yeah, I expect him to play. Pacheco's like a must start every single week at this point. He's like a very high end running back too, to me. And obviously you play Mahomes. And it should be great. I mean, they should really storm this Broncos team. And honestly, this is the type of game where if these receivers are going to do anything, or they're going to at least build some confidence and chemistry and reps with Mahomes, that's why it's going to be important to watch this game. Like, you can't play any of these dudes, right? But I want to see if they use, like, let's get Rashee Rice some of these MVS routes, okay? Like, I guarantee you he can make more plays. Like, let's get Sky Moore then. If you kick Rashee Rice outside, put more on the inside. You know, and if you still want to have Justin Watson out there, that'd be great. But like, they need to constrict this unit down. They can't just be running these guys with so much in and out. Like, it's just not going to work, and it has not worked so far. So, interested to see if anybody can build some momentum here. And yeah, Rashee Rice, like you said, you perfectly said it. Like, he's left plays on the field so far this year, even if he has also made plays too.
And the Broncos allowing almost 10 more fantasy points per game than the next most to running backs this year. So yes, Pacheco start with confidence. He's quietly, speaking of red zone work, he's getting a lot of love there. So Pacheco has a real interesting amount of fantasy upside from here on out.
All right, buddy. Well, that is going to do it for us. Hell of a show.
As always, Harmon, good talking ball with you.
All right, tomorrow we set the stage for week 6 with all the games you need to binge, stream, and skip. Scott Pianowski is going to join me for that. Until then, we're out.